Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Geisner from the Jewish Culture and Holocaust Remembrance 10/7 communities. I am thrilled to invite you to our first film book author uh, collaboration with my really good friend and colleague, Dana Scrager from Los Angeles. And we'll be talking about Dana's terrific food site, Jewish Cooking, her ability to understand Italian Jewish research. And so, Dana, I want to ask you to start by saying, I know we've done psychological intergenerational trauma programming together for our communities, and we've done several of them throughout since 2020, the pandemic. But I heard recently that you've decided to retire from psychology, give up your license and practice. So let's start there and kind of go through that tribulations of how you decided that and how you've transitioned your life to being a blogger, foodie, and really the founder of the Jewish cooking site, which has thousands, tens of thousands of members on Facebook.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here and to talk with you and interact with you and be a part of the wonderful community that you've developed. We had some amazing experiences on Zoom with the community, particularly during the pandemic. And I'm so excited that you're continuing more series of Zooms and interviews. And I'm honored to be one of your interviewees. So let me tell you and tell the community who knows me what I'm up to. My first profession has been a psychologist. And as Jeffrey has said, I've been talking about intergenerational trauma with the group. But I guess, behind the scenes passion and now second career is Jewish cooking. And I come from a long line of cooks, my mom, my grandma, aunts, who are very famous for Jewish recipes, for their cooking, for their holiday meals, for their recipes. And way back when I was young, I always said one day I would like to write a cookbook and preserve these recipes. And as it's evolved, instead of a cookbook, I've been putting recipes online one at a time on a blog. It's called Dana's Table, danastable.com. And the main recipes that I put online are Jewish recipes, really honoring my heritage as well as other Jewish cuisines from other regions of the world. And those recipes bring back memories, maybe bring back comfort. It's like the food of our childhood, it's the food of our family gatherings on our holidays. And so that's very exciting to me. And as Jeffrey said, I have a community myself on Facebook, two, in fact, one called Jewish Cooking and one called Jewish Holiday Cooking. These are communities of people on Facebook who like to talk about Jewish cooking. So if you do, please join me. Would love to have you. So, Jeffrey,
Let me
let's
ask,
see.
I'll ask you one other question. I know
Yes,
that one of your groups was founded by Joan Nathan, and who's obviously a very well-known author of Jewish cooking. How did you happen to get together with Joan? And now I know you're actually running for the Joan site, which she founded, but for yourself.
correct. Okay, so I've always been a fan of Joan Nathan's cookbooks. I learned a lot of recipes when I was first married out of her cookbook. And I had the opportunity to meet her in Los Angeles, where I live, at a conference. And as we started talking, one thing led to another, and we decided to do a cooking class at my house where she came and taught a group of us all kinds of recipes for Rosh Hashanah. And from that experience and interaction, we've become friends. We hang out, we go to food events. She really liked what I was doing in my Jewish holiday cooking group and all the interaction I was getting, all that like help and assistance and attention I was giving to the members. So her group was sitting there and she really wasn't in it very often. And so she wanted the group and the members to get more attention. and get better moderation of the group because, of course, sometimes there's spammers. So she gave the group to me. So since she gave me the group, I've doubled the membership and I run both groups.
And when was that?
I started my group in 2020. She probably gave me her group, I would say, in 2021.
Good. So now you're moving to doing Jewish cooking. You're blogging on a daily basis. You're posting to your website recipes. But I also know that you've decided to take another kind of Uber move, and you're actually deciding to become a foodie and travel the world. And your first trip is going to be to Italy, and you're taking people from all over the world with you to learn about the Italian experience. So let's talk a little bit about how all that kind of got together, how that you're like an food entrepreneur. So let's kind of put this in the right perspective and allow the audience to understand what you're up to and how you're entrepreneuring in the food world.
Okay, so I what I love about this, and maybe this will help other people as well, is I feel like my food career is my 2.0. So it's very exciting to be midlife and make a shift and turn a passion into something that's more full time. It's just really fun and exciting to focus time and attention on a new project. So I know, Jeffrey, you have a retirement project, which is running this group and these videos that we're doing. And so I just encourage people, if you have something else you love, why not give it a shot? I've been doing this as a passion in the background for the past 13 years. So it's not brand new, but it's been growing. And so now I'm running with it, and I have my psychology practice on hold. So I'm semi-retired, I guess you could say, or probably retired. Although I still stay active in the community and do advocacy work. Still have my sort of finger on the pulse, but so and I can reinitiate anytime I want. But for now, that's on pause, and I'm really enjoying being in the food world. So I guess what I'll say is what I like about being in the food world is this isn't only about food, which is wonderful. Food connects people. We enjoy food. I think it's a Julia Child quote, food people are the best people. I'm meeting so many new people and making new friends. That part's super fun. Um, but this is really more than that. This is about helping other people celebrate Jewish holidays, giving people the tools to bring family members and friends around the table. So it's helping my recipes are the tools that help people to gather people around the table, make their own connections, make their own memories. And a lot of Judaism happens in the home. A lot of most of the holidays are celebrated in the home. So this is giving people the tools to connect with their Judaism and connect people with their Judaism around the table. So there's a lot of deeper meaning here. Now, what does this all have to do with Italy? This is the picture that we've been looking at for the past several minutes. This is me cooking in Italy. This is me at a cooking school called the Awaiting Table in Lecce, Italy, in the Puglia region. And that's homemade pasta. So fun to learn how to make homemade pasta. It's kind of like playing with Play-Doh almost. If you're like artistic or like to do things with your hands, you can learn how to make many shapes over the week at the cooking school, and a homemade sauce. So I went to this cooking school pre-pandemic, and what I thought was going to be an incredible food and cooking experience, which it was, turned out to be so much more. It opened my eyes to the traces of Jews who have lived in this area
And where is the exactly?
historically. This is in the schools in specific is in Puglia. Puglia is in southern Italy. If you picture the peninsula of Italy as a boot, Puglia is in the heel of the boot. So it's pretty much as far south as you can go in Italy and on the right hand side on the Adriatic Sea. Although the way it dips down, it's almost like a spur of the boot. There's also an Ionian coast. So the great thing about Puglia is there's so much coastline. you're probably never more than an hour from the coast, no matter where you are in the region. And when the winds are not favorable on one side of the peninsula, you go to the other side and the weather's great. So it's also got really good climate for growing fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of olive oil production there, wine production there. So there's a very rich food culture down there. It's not as well known area as some other areas, say like Rome or Florence, but it's very well known from within Italy. It's sort of like I'm letting you in on a secret. This is the area where the Italians travel in the summertime. So try not to go in August because that's when it's the most crowded, but it would never be as crowded as like somewhere like Rome. And the trip I'm doing is starting on August 31st in the evening. We're there the first week of September. So we're right at the beginning of the shoulder season, which is a really nice time to go because the weather's still good, but it's not as crowded.
How's the winter?
So
How's the winters?
you can still go in winter, and I'm from California, so I probably say I don't like the winters there. But if you're from anywhere else in the world, you'd be like, the weather's great. It doesn't usually snow, so it's really not that cold there. The bigger cities have vibrant life all year long. Lecce, where the cooking school is a university town. That place is hopping all year long. It's so like vibrant and full of life. You feel the energy when you're there. That's what I love so much about it. People walk around at night before their dinner. So it feels very alive to be there. It's not like Los Angeles where we take cars and sequester in our houses and don't interact with people. Like you walk around there and you see people. Like the crazy thing is the first morning I was walking around there, I was with the cooking school teacher, and I knew of one other person in the town, a friend of a friend. I knew his name was Francisco. I had never met him. And we're walking around and we run into him. So like the first minute I was there, I ran into him. So that was like, that's small town living. I live in Los Angeles. It's not a small town like that. So anyway, as I got to know the history of Italy through being there, that's the beauty of travel, is that it brings the stories to life. You're not just hearing about things or looking at photos in the book. You're like walking in the footsteps of the people who came before you. So I learned that Jews lived there and thrived there and lived in relative peace for 1,500 years, from around 70 CE or AD, if you do your dates that way, from the fall of the Second Temple in Jerusalem to 1541. For 1,500 years, Jews were there. Okay, at the end of the 1400s, the region next to Puglia was 40% Jewish. 40% Jewish. I mean, I don't think Los Angeles or New York are 40% Jewish, I mean, that's a really high percentage.
You know how many
So
you know how many Jews in raw numbers that is?
I was wondering that. I have to ask Rabbi Aiello. I'll show you her photo because she will know. She's my source. So let's go well, okay, let me finish my thought and I'm going to go to the next photo. So the Jews lived here for so long. How come I never knew about this? Like, you don't hear about this. So that's a lot of years. And how come I'm there now, 500 years later, and I have to hunt for little signs and traces? Like it's pretty close to erased. So, but there's still excavations, there's still things to see. Okay, but so it just really makes you think, or you wonder sort of the fragility of things. Or, the question is, and maybe the question some, maybe a lot of American Jews are asking is how do you know when things go south? Okay, Jeffrey, you and I have lived in America in a very good time for Jews. And we're wondering what's happening. There's so much rise in anti-Semitism. Like, what's happening? You want to read the tea leaves, you want to read the signs. So the best way to do that is to know history, not just look myopically at today, but see the whole span of time, see these whole 2,000 years, and see that history repeats itself, that the signs repeat themselves. And you're so much better educated to understand what's happening to today. So let me show you the next slide. Okay.
Just right click your mouse.
Okay, I see where I can get it. Okay, there it is. This is the Arch of Titus in Rome. What does this have to do with today? First, let me tell you what you're looking at. These are Romans around the time of 70 CE. These are the Romans who conquered Jerusalem and caused the fall of the Second Temple, the destruction of the Second Temple. Here they are coming back to Rome with the spoils, including the menorah, including slaves, aka hostages, and pieces of the Roman temple in Rome. So we all know today in 2023, Hamas GoPro'd their atrocities. That's the record of what happened. If you want to know what happened in 70 AD, 2,000 years ago, this is the Arch of Titus in Rome, close to the Roman Forum, right in the center of Rome. This is a depiction carved in stone of the spoils of war and their attack and the aftermath. 2,000 years ago, and we have a record of what happened. They left a record.
So
Well, the digital
so let me ask
go
you,
ahead.
in the right in the center of that photo, it looks like there's almost a camera. What is
It
that?
does.
Do you know
I
what?
I no, I actually do not know, but I do know that what's depicted is they brought back souvenirs, like pieces of the actual temple,
You got it.
like chunks of stone. So, as well as people, as they brought them back as slaves. So, some of the very first slaves in Italy, some of the very first Jews in Italy came as slaves in 78 AD. So, okay. So now we got the 2,000-year span. This has happened before. Um, okay. So if you want to know who else was in Italy around this time, and maybe answers one of I know your other questions. This is a piece of a temple, a synagogue from 4 CE or AD in Calabria. Calabria is the region just very far south in Italy, just west of Puglia. And I think it was in the 1970s or 80s, they were excavating to build a freeway and they came upon the ruins of a temple. And this temple was Ashkenazi. So I think that's very interesting because I don't usually think of Italian Jews as being Ashkenazi, but these people in Calabria were Ashkenazi. So this is a mosaic. This is all original. So also, if you want, I was so happy to see the site and to see the site with a good guide who could explain what was happening. And that's a replica of a menorah that they found. Um, but this is what it looks like today. But that's the close up of the mosaic. It's ruins. And see that? That's the freeway they built over. So they were trying to build the freeway and they didn't build it on the ruins. They had to elevate it and build the freeway over. So it looks like ruins. I have another picture of ruins. So there's not like a lot to see, but the guide will tell you this is this room, this is that room, this is what was found in each room. They have some of the artifacts in the museum of what was found. And this area is on the coast. There's so much coastline in Calabria too. It's breathtaking. Oh, sorry. It's breathtaking. That's about an hour away in Tropea. But I mean, look at the color of that water. I mean, It's so breathtakingly beautiful there. So what happened to these Ashkenazi Jews who were there 2,000 years ago? They were too close to the coast, too many invaders. So they had to move and go further inland and more in the hills. The center of Calabria is more hilly than the coast. So they moved. They abandoned that site. So
Before
I
you
was very, go ahead.
uh, picture, there's a bunch of color, what looks like color stones on this,
Umbrellas.
their umbrellas. So people are actually bathing on the
This
coast.
was this was June, yeah, and this is from a window of a hotel, and that's umbrellas.
Nice.
Anyway, there's photographers like Gray Malin who have really cool shots of these like umbrellas on the beach. I don't know if he was in Calabria or not, but I tried my hand at Gray Malin style photography, and it's not as easy as Gray Malin makes it look. But okay, so Calabria. So now that we're on the subject of Calabria, maybe I will go to those photos if I can find them. Here it is. Yes. Okay. This on the left is Rabbi Aiello. That is her husband, Enrico, and that is me and my husband, and that's Enrico's Nutella birthday cake. And that's been his birthday cake. First of all, they are both Italian Jews. Okay, both Rabbi Aiello and Enrico, both Italian Jews. That's his birthday cake. It's a Nutella cake. I have the recipe, and that's the cake his mom made him as a boy, and that he has been making for himself since. So that's a very authentic Jewish Italian recipe, which we enjoyed together. Um,
And
Rabbi, go
and
ahead.
he is conservative, Orthodox, Reform.
Reform. She is the first reform and the first female rabbi in Italy. Most of Italian Jews in Italy belong to an Orthodox synagogue, and it's got a parent organization, an Orthodox parent organization that oversees all of those Orthodox synagogues. So they're not so happy she's there, but she is amazing. So let me tell you what she's doing, because this um, really applies to a certain group of people around the world. She was born in Florida. Her grandparents and her father were born in Calabria. Enrique is born in Calabria as well. So when her grandma would come to visit her, and it would be Friday night Shabbat, her grandma would go to the basement of the house to light candles. And she would say, Grandma, what are you doing? She's like, the light the candles in the basement. Did you hear me? I said I have to light the candles in the basement. She'd whisper and like sort of crouch and hide and refuse to light the candles anywhere but the basement. And she'd say, But Grandma, we're in America. You can light the candles anywhere you want. You can light them in the living room, you can light them anywhere. And she's like, No, I have to light them in the basement. So what she was a hidden secret. She was practicing her Judaism in secret, in hiding. So what happened is, going back to the late 1400s, early 1500s, Ashkenazi Jews were in this region. Also, this area in Italy that I'm talking about, Calabria, Sicily, southern Italy, Sicily, Calabria, Puglia, and up to Campania, where Naples is, up to Rome. This is a trade route. And also, there's lots of ports on the Adriatic coast, which I can show you. I have pictures of that, where trade is coming through. So, a lot of Jewish people were involved in trade and involved in banking. Many of these regions or countries had restrictions on what jobs the Jews could have. So those were some of the jobs that were allowed. And so the Jews traveled through this region, and some of it liked it and settled there, or some settled there because that's where they had business with trade and banking. So they're traveling through and settling the region. So more come as they go through these trade routes, more come and stay. But in 1492, there was the Spanish Inquisition, where Ferdinand and Isabella expelled all Jews from Spain. I don't know how many there were, but there were a lot. And a lot came nearby to Sicily and Calabria. That's how Calabria really grew its Jewish population, because all the Sephardic Jews, Jews of Spanish origin, were coming and staying in Calabria. So let me show you where the synagogue is, or was, I should say. I hope it's the next picture. Yeah. Okay. This building is at a sort of lower or normal elevation in Calabria. And this was the synagogue. This is now a church, and very difficult to get in to see the inside, like kind of near impossible. So we were on the outside, and we wandered up and down and through the neighborhood and through the gate into the neighborhood. That was the former Jewish area of the region. But soon the that this area in southern Italy was a Spanish territory. And the Spanish, after they kicked the Jews out of the country, they decided they would kick the Jews out of their territories as well. So the Jews had to leave. So where did they go? Some of them went to the top of the mountain. And where did I go? To the top of the mountain, because that's where Rabbi Aiello lives. So I don't know if I have any more. Oh, yes, this is in Rabbi Aiello's synagogue section of the building her house is in. This is her completely fabulous and wonderful menorah collection from all around the world. It's a really cool collection, really some very fabulous pieces in there. Anyway, so the Jews had to either convert, leave, be killed, or practice in hiding. So a certain number of Jews went up to the top of the mountain and practiced sort of in hiding in secret. And so that's where this is Sarah Stretta up at the top of the mountain. It's a beautiful drive through trees, which I don't have a photo handy of it. But what, okay, so eventually the Jews got routed out. I guess there must have been like a bounty if you turn people in or something like that to the Spanish government. So
When is this? What period of time are we talking about?
late 1500s.
Okay.
Or in the 1500s, sorry. So this is what happened, that most of the Jews at that point decided to just move more up north. There's a lot more like still existing synagogues and stuff in further north in Italy. People dispersed, but some people stayed in Sarah Stretta, like Rabbi Aiello and her husband's family. They stayed. They practiced in secret. They lit the Shabbat candles in the basement. So Rabbi Aiello's in the area, and there's many, many, many people there. And I've met some people who, in their heart, they just know, they just have a feeling like they don't feel fully actualized. They don't feel fully themselves. They may have grown up Catholic or with no religion, but somehow in their heart, they have this feeling that they're Jewish or their ancestors were Jewish. So if you talk to Rabbi Aiello, she has a fabulous website, which I can make a note to give you that for the show notes. Um, you know, so she has so many interesting things on the website. I think the most interesting thing is she has a last name database. It's a database of last names that indicate that your ancestors were probably Jewish. Your Italian ancestors were probably Jewish. So I think that's really fascinating. Her husband's also a retired professor, so he's been a part of studying all this history and writing papers about it in Italian. Um, so there's people also, there's plenty of people who have little customs. They talk about this in other cultures. You know, you can hear about this, people who were Spanish, people who are in South America. Sometimes they're called Conversano Jews, Murano Jews. There's all different names for hidden Jews. So they still do little practices, but they don't know is like, I just thought that was an idiosyncrasy of my family, that we buried our dead right away. We, wrapped them in a plain cloth. And all these little traditions that we have, somehow there were remnants of Shabbat and burial practices and holidays that the family kept up as an idiosyncrasy of the family. But once you hear them describe what they do, these are all Jewish practices. So these are the hints that their ancestors were Jewish. And in some families, like when grandma's on the deathbed, grandma whispers, go to my top desk drawer in the back. And then in the back are Jewish artifacts like a Kiddush cup, a mezuzah, a menorah, whatever, little things that are for used for practicing Judaism. So some people know, some people have heard the whispers. So Rabbi Aiello, as well as some other communities, are welcoming these people to return. And so she's got a whole community of people that follow her, some in this little village and some online. She does bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, but some people don't feel like their true selves or their whole selves until they reconnect and they return. So I think what she's doing is really beautiful. And I don't know, it takes a special person to do what she's doing.
So let's kind of bring this a little forward from the 1500s. And obviously, we're a Holocaust community. Many of our community are generational survivors. Some are still here with survivors. How did this all play out during, the late 1920s, the 1930s, Mussolini's kind of connection and link to Hitler? Perhaps, I know
Oh,
that you've done a ton of research in this area, so maybe you can educate us with all of your research and share with us.
I have lots of answers for you, Jeffrey. Let me see if I have any photos to match. We can go back to these. Um, it's also interesting. Yes, I guess I'll start here. Okay, we're we're jumping ahead, 400 or 500 years. So the most interesting I've come across to help people understand what happened to the Jews in Italy during the time of Mussolini and Hitler is to watch a podcast called Pack One Bag. Pack One Bag. Phenomenal 10-episode podcast that I recently listened to about the Modigliani family, told from the point of view of the great grandson, who's an American, who's a documentary maker, and he produced this podcast. He interviewed his father, he knew his grandfather, and then the story starts with his great grandfather. So, the whole point of his podcast, which relates to today, is when you start to see fascism in your country, how do you know when it's time to leave? And he repeats this question many times over through the podcast. These are thoughts that run through my head for myself today. And then the next part of his question, and what happens to those who can't leave or don't leave. And he answers those questions, at least in terms of his family during fascism and Nazism in Italy in the last century. So, I don't want to spoil the details for a very well done podcast, but again, we really need to pay attention to the signs that other people had in other points in history. And then the signs get louder and louder and louder until you end up here. So we are looking at plaques in Naples, Italy. I also have these plaques in Rome. That's Rome, but not the plaques. Okay. This is a lovely family that runs a very good restaurant in Rome in the Jewish Quarter. The woman in the middle, her name is Yael, spent marvelous time with her. She's a chef. She gave me recipes. I have one on my website, but she took me, in addition to the fabulous food experience we had, she took me here. This is her great grandma on the left, this building. So sorry. Um, yes, great grandmother. So, what are these plaques? You can see these plaques throughout Italy, and you can see these in other countries in Europe. These are brass plaques in the ground in front of homes where people were taken from their homes during the Holocaust and deported to concentration camps. You can see right here, you don't really need to understand Italian to see that it's the name of the person, when she was born, when she was taken, and she was deported to Auschwitz and it looks like assassinate, and she was killed. So the story is so moving to hear it from the great granddaughter. And she walked me over, like just 2 blocks from where the family restaurant is. She said her grandpa was 5 years old and he was home with his mother when the Nazis came. And he escaped. Unfortunately, his mother and the neighbor did not, but he escaped by going from rooftop to rooftop to rooftop to get to where his father was. And he and his father were able to escape. So I'm sitting there, standing there in the Jewish quarter and looking at the buildings and trying to figure out what this 5-year-old kid did. I mean, it's just a really like moving story that when you meet the families who are affected by these things, it becomes very real. So um, there's also lots of stories in Italy that I heard in the podcast and that I heard from the tour guide in Naples that there were helpers. There were helpers that saved many, 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 many people. And I can go back to the Naples slide maybe, but um, this is in Naples. The tour guide's mother saved many, he's an older man. He saved many people because she saved many people because she spoke multiple languages and she was put in charge of monitoring conversation and translating. And so she would tell the people who needed to hide, like it's time to go hide, like in the fields or whatever, because she understood like when the Nazis were coming, because she was forced to translate for them. But she's like double agent or whatever. Like, they couldn't really force her cooperation. So it's a really fascinating story. And he said some people are talking about making a movie about what his mother did, and I hope they do because it's a really very moving story
So
that I
you put some,
heard.
can you put
Yeah, go
some
ahead.
quality and quantitative information to us? So of the Jews who were there prior to Mussolini and Hitler, how many were there? And how many people if you know, and if you don't, I can do some research.
I don't have hard numbers for you, Jeffrey. Okay, this is the synagogue in Naples where I heard the story of the tour guide's mother. Um, being able to hide and rescue people. So, Jews. So, so the thing about being Jewish, which I think will interest the listeners, is there's a summer camp song that I know, and maybe some others know, that proved to be so true when I was on this journey of uncovering recipes and history simultaneously. So the song is, and I sing off key, so hopefully I'm not going to embarrass myself too much. But the song is Wherever You Go, There's Always Someone Jewish. I don't know, the song goes on. But that song played in my head the entire month I was researching in Italy because Jewish people, kept connecting me to other Jewish people. And everybody was so helpful and so welcoming and so eager to help, especially these women. This is the meeting room adjacent to the synagogue that I just showed you in Naples. And I met with these women. And this day was so hot, and this place has no air conditioning. But we sat at this table, and you can see the table is a cookbook. And I have that cookbook. I don't think it's in front of me. Um, and as well as handouts. So these women gathered their favorite Rosh Hashanah recipes and put them in booklets for me. And the lady in purple um, is actually American and speaks perfect English and Italian. So she was my translator and was such a generous conduit. But she gathered these older women who came with their favorite recipes, and she helped us facilitate a conversation. The woman in the more black flower dress, she spoke some English. She's got like a high up office in the WIZO, the Women's Jewish Organization. But she helped translate for everybody. And the women were thrilled that somebody was interested in them and their community and wanted to learn about their community. And they were so happy someone was interested in their cooking and their recipes. They were super happy to share. So it was a really beautiful experience. And everybody who helped me, I brought them a very beautiful challah cover, which I think I'm actually holding in another picture I'll show you in a second, as a thank you to them. So I hope that they like them and they use them, and they remember my interest and their generosity from our time together. Um, so here, sorry, Jeffrey. Okay, there it is. Okay, yeah. So this is Angela. She's also in Naples. You could see I'm holding my gift, and she's a musician, but she's also a fabulous cook, and she shared recipes. But this is also part of that connection, like that you can feel like the Jews all around the world, like we're all connected. It's one big happy family. I think that's part of what keeps us going. That's part of that. It's part of the hope. It's part of the like energy or life force in all of us is this connection. So we're two moms, we're similar age kids. And after we, talked about food, we talked about what we each do. She told me all about her music career, which is very interesting because she plays Italian Jewish music. Like, she's like preserving music and the history of the compositions. But we sat and we talked as moms and like, what's it like to be moms to young adults? And, she lives across the globe from me, but we share so much in common and really enjoyed a lovely afternoon together in her home. So
So let me
I
ask you,
just, I just left with a lot of um, hope and inspiration and good feeling because everybody was so warm and welcoming and generous in Jewish communities in many different cities in southern Italy.
so let me ask you, how did you decide to be an entrepreneur? And how did you decide that you had to not only research Italy, as you just beautifully done and shared with us. But how did you decide that you wanted to actually take on this incredible risk and burden of taking how many people with you to
10,
Italy? 10
10.
people, 10 people. And you should also explain that you wanted to do this a year ago or 2 years ago, and you had it all planned and something happened that I would love for you to relay that story without giving it away. So I want you to kind of go through the process of entrepreneuring, figuring out that you have this vision to bring other Jews to this place in Italy that has so enriched you and has the Jewish culture for millennia. So let's start there. First of all, what happened when you first got this idea, and how did you get this idea, and how did it sort of execute, and where did it go?
Great. So, as I said, or started to say, I think a little bit earlier, I took a trip to cooking school in Italy, and it turned into so much more. As I walked in these footsteps, everywhere I turned, maybe I was attuned, finding the traces of Jews that used to be there. This was astounding to me. So I said to myself, this has been such like a life-changing trip for me. I really want to bring other people to see what I have seen. Okay, now I'm going to fast forward and say some of what I'm showing you is from a subsequent research trip that took me 1 month. So I can't take to do. So I can't take every people to see every single city and every single thing I did because it's too many places, and the trip has a a specifically carved out itinerary. But I wanted people to see what I saw. So the cooking school teacher and I. Oh, do I have a picture of him in all of this? I don't think on these slides
That's
that
okay.
I do.
We'll get it.
Anyway, it's on my website. But anyway, so we just got along so well. Just his strengths and my strengths and his knowledge and my knowledge partner up very well together. So he invited me to bring people to his cooking school. So some of this was his initiative saying, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" So part of what um, prompts um, the, the, uh, the Judaism and this city and this cooking school in particular is an excavated mikvah. So let me see what I can show you of that. Oh, here it is. Okay. Um, so this is a just typical street in Lecce. You meander down these cobblestone paved streets, and you have these yellow colored sandstone buildings, and they look like bright yellow against a bright blue sky. It's very picturesque. And when you first get there, you're like, this place is like a maze. Like, where am I? And then very quickly after you're there for the week for the cooking school, you know your way around the whole maze. You can walk everywhere. It all is like very safe, and you learn your way around and you feel like a local. So that's like super fun to stay in one place longer. But the place is okay. See this? This is Synagogue Street. So you're like, what's this doing here? Okay. Well, if you want to see the synagogue today, they built this breathtaking Baroque building on top of the synagogue. The synagogue is under there. And there's a hotel next door, and I've met the owner, and the cooking school owner, Silvestro knows the owner, Michelangelo, very well, owns the hotel. One of the hotel rooms has a plexiglass window into the synagogue that's below ground. So the interesting thing about Italy is that it is built in layers. You can go to a museum in Lecce where you can see a layer all the way down to a Mesopotamian um, sort of like groove or like ditch or ridge in the ground. That is how water traveled. Okay. And then you keep going through this building and you see all these different layers, artifacts from 1700 monks, And if you're in this area, the Jewish quarter, you can start to see things. Let me see what I put in here. No. I think mostly just in the okay. This is in the museum. There was a, I think the year could have been around 2015. There was a restaurant remodel that was being done, and they found the mikveh. So this museum next door to that, which right next door to this building, has the excavated mikveh. And other artifacts. And you get a good tour guide, and they tell you about the whole history of this Jewish quarter in the region. And then they walk you around the neighborhood, to see what was formerly the Jewish quarter. There's only small traces, but because of the museum and because of the excavated mikveh, it's very fascinating. They still honor the area by the name of the street. This is not the only street with Hebrew lettering and Hebrew name. So people are starting to come to this town because of the Jewish history. There's also another museum 20 minutes away, headed towards the Ionian coast, which we're going to visit during this trip. But this is another piece of the Holocaust. And this is also part of the hope that after the Holocaust, there were many Jews from Eastern European countries who had no home to go back to. So Italy opened up a number of, they're called DP camps, but they were places of respite and waiting for Jewish families, for Jewish people with no homes. Some people, were there up to maybe, I don't know, up to maybe 5 years ish, where they waited and they lived on a coast. There's a couple different spots, but in a couple different locations. But there's a museum that honors this history, that Italy opened up its doors for people to come live there until they could be relocated. A lot of people got on boats and went to Israel. My friend's father was born in one of these camps, and his family got on a boat to South Africa. Um, so I start wondering, why are there these museums? Why is Italy interested in honoring its Jewish history? And we had an amazing tour guide, an amazing person who knows absolutely everything there is to know about Calabria. He's like the mayor, the ambassador. Um, there's a National Holocaust Remembrance Day in Italy. So this has been important to the Italian government, probably pre uh, the current regime, but that made this national day. And so the Holocaust has to be taught and has to be acknowledged in the schools so that everybody grows up knowing about this. So this is quite amazing. And so now these museums have popped up, and schools can bring their kids on field trips, on these Remembrance Day or any other day. So I just found that rather astounding. I was very surprised to learn, about this degree of like openness, welcoming, acknowledgement. Felt very beautiful and very welcoming.
So let's bring you back to 2023. You decided that you were going to create the tour. So what happened?
Thank you, Jeffrey. So the first deterrent was the pandemic. Then, like you say, the next deterrent, because of October 7th, 2023, when it was time to sell my next trip, many Jews in my groups, members of my groups, said, we're very interested in this trip. This sounds amazing, but we don't want to travel right now. It doesn't feel safe as a Jew to go with a group of Jews who potentially could, I don't know, and go to Jewish sites. Like, we don't feel comfortable. The world is too unstable. We don't know how it's going to unfold. We don't want to make this commitment to do something, coming up in the months ahead when everything is too unknown or unstable. So since then, you know, there have been no major incidents that I know of in Italy. Definitely zero interests in the Puglia region, incidents in the Puglia region. But it's that time of instability and uncertainty and rising anti-Semitism where people were afraid. So I went on the trip in that time period, that was projected in the future. And that's when I was there for a month and did my research in four different southern regions of Italy and, met all those amazing people and didn't see or notice any problems or disturbances. But, you know, I also I don't have a crystal ball, but I haven't seen or heard or felt anything brewing in this area myself. And I have my contacts that are there now. Um, and Rome has a huge Jewish population. We haven't talked a lot about that. Um, but in Rome, it's one of the oldest continuous Jewish communities in the world. So Jews have been there in a community in Rome for 2,000 years and they're flourishing. So I have the picture of the synagogue. I don't, these pictures are too little for me to see to pick the right photo, Jeffrey. Um, hold on. I don't know why this doesn't work very well. What the heck happened to the synagogue? Sorry, you have to edit this.
No worries.
So weird because I thought I put it in here.
So let me ask you, how does your family
Here's
feel?
Rome. Here's
Okay.
Rome. Okay. All right. Edit that out. Continuing. Um, this is the inside of the synagogue in Rome. It has very high security. There is a school right next to it. There are so many restaurants right in this neighborhood. These restaurants are hugely popular. The cuisine of the Roman Jews is very, very popular throughout the city, not just with the Jews, but throughout the city. It's part of the pride of Rome, the cuisine, and it's very popular with tourists. So I do have photos. Oh, the famous fried artichokes.
Before you go there,
And
before you go
yeah,
there, I heard that there's so much traffic and so much tourism in Italy that they're breaking, the systems are breaking down and they're asking people not to come. Did you have any sense of that when you traveled?
certain cities are get unbearably crowded, like Florence. Florence isn't that big. Rome was very busy when I was there. I was there um, in June and July. I was there at like both ends of my month-long trip. Super hot in July, but it was never, I could always do what I wanted to do. Now, if you wanted last minute tickets to the Vatican or the Colosseum or something like that, no, you have to plan. Those cannot be had last minute and they're very crowded. But the beauty of Rome is that it's a huge country, and no matter what region I've been in, and I guess I would have to count how many regions I've been in because it's a lot. There's so many beautiful and worthwhile things to do and eat in all the regions that you don't need to go to just only the most popular cities. But if you want to go to a popular city, you might as well either A, go off season, or B, have a strategy. So what's happening now in 2025 is that there's the Jubilee at the Vatican in Rome. This is a once every 25-year Catholic pilgrimage that brings millions and millions of more tourists at a very crowded time. So, for the trip that I am organizing for 2025, I need to fly into Rome in order for me to have the best way to fly out of Los Angeles. But I'm not staying in Rome because I know it's extra crowded. I'm going straight to Puglia. It will not be too crowded. It will be an amazing experience. And if other people want to tack on other regions or other cities, to the trip, they're, welcome to make their own plans, or, if they want to ask me or Silvestro for ideas,
Tell us
um, we
tell
can
the,
help.
tell the audience a little bit about your trip, what you want the audience to know about the trip, the experience. Um, I'm sure you can give some information about your contact information so that people who are listening and are interested and perhaps want to join you for this trip. I know that you have 10 seats, so I don't know how many seats are left unfilled. And I think
So
it's
as of today, we still have room. So I welcome anybody who wants to join to check out my website, which I will give the exact, link to the trip information to put in the show notes. And if people want to DM me or hop on a Zoom with me, I'm happy, to answer all questions. But, here's what I hope people get out of it. First of all, I went back to the picture of me cooking in Silvestro's kitchen. Okay. So Silvestro and I are team teaching this class. Silvestro Silvestori has run this cooking school for 22 years. He's an amazing host. He is an encyclopedia of Puglia, the food especially, but anything you want to know about the region. He's a trained sommelier. He in olive oil and wine. So we're going to have olive oil tastings, wine tastings. It's always a good time at his house because after you have this fun cooking all this food, you sit in the dining room and talk and sit and drink wine for as late as you want. Silvestro never tells you to leave. You can leave when you're ready. It can be all night. So it's kind of like it feels like an endless party. But see, part of what I love about Italy is that warmth and that hospitality and that life happens around the table. That feels so familiar to me. That feels so Jewish, but it's also so Italian. So I've been trying to figure out why. Is this like similarities in culture? Is this because Jews have actually been in the region for a long time and it's like some cross pollination? Um, I know my family lived in the modern day Ukraine 100 years ago and going back generations. Where were they before? Because most of the people who ended up in that region traveled from somewhere else. So where was my family in Italy way back and I can't trace it? It sure feels like it because this area and this region like speak to my soul, call my name, like no other place I've been. I've seen Jewish life in France and Spain and other places. And it's all, worthwhile and interesting to see, but nothing like speaks to my heart like Italy. So I want people to have all those feelings. I want people, Silvestro has researched his recipes. I've researched my recipes. As you can see, I've met with Jewish Italian home cooks sharing their holiday recipes. So I have recipes to share in this cooking class. Silvestro has recipes to share. We're going to have that feeling of Jewish joy and connection around the table every lunch, every dinner. And I think we all can.
what does one day look like?
We have field trip days and we have cooking school days. So on a cooking school day, you meet in the town square. I so wish I lived in a town with a town square. You meet in the town square and you walk down these meandering streets and you shop like a local. You go and you meet the guy who owns the produce booth, the butcher, fishmonger. You meet all the local food purveyors. You shop for what's fresh. You bring it back to the cooking school. As you wander around the town, you watch Silvestro run into all his neighbors and he points out like local only information, whatever he wants to, share about, all the little interesting details about where he lives. Go back to the cooking school and you cook. This is not like culinary school. This is not like French cooking school where it's strict. This is home cooking style. Like, have fun. It's very easygoing. And if you just want to sit and talk, or sit and drink wine, you can do that. Like when you're done, you're done. Like you can get a head start into the dining room and start eating. Like he's very flexible. He reads the room. So, and then you get to know people. You get to know all these super interesting people. I've sat around his table quite a number of times. You meet interesting other people from around the world who are also taking the cooking school. You find everything you have in common. You're in this case, it will most likely be all Jews and we'll be from all around the world or all around the US, but we'll find like what we have in common and that's a beautiful
Do you
feeling.
do you
So
do you sense that spouses are going, or is it really
it
just
it depends. You can love to cook, or you can, if you don't love to cook and you love to eat, you got to love one or the other, cooking or eating. And if you decide one day that you rather sleep in or you rather go to the beach or whatever, and like take off for the morning but show up for lunch, that's all fine. Like
what are your
it's
reservations with spouse typically?
it's mixed. It's mixed. Some yes, some no. So it's whatever fits. Then there's field trip days, so we are going to go see some other things in the region, including the other museum. I have a town that I love called Otranto. In their cathedral is the largest mosaic floor in all of Europe. And in the top left corner is a tree of life and the names of all the characters or many of the character names from the Torah. So, there's been, cross pollination of cultures in this region for a long time. The area has been occupied by Turks, by Moors. For a long time, Italy lived, going back hundreds or millennia, lived with many cultures, living peacefully together. Most of what did not work out for the Jews in Italy had to do with new rulers or certain regimes in the church who started making unfavorable decisions towards the Jews. The people as a whole largely, got along and coexisted peacefully.
So how many days?
So
How many days is this trip?
it's 6 nights because we start with a welcome dinner and it's 5 days. And I highly recommend people stay on longer and especially travel in the region. There are so many super cool hilltop towns that are like walled, they're like on top of the hill. They're all white colored and they're all fortressed or whatever, from the time of the with invaders, and they're charming towns. There's also many seaside towns, and the water color is turquoise. It's breathtaking, very unspoiled. Like this is an uncrowded, unspoiled, more natural area. It's not like going to Venice, which I happen to love, but Venice, unfortunately, so crowded, it feels like Disneyland. Like like you're in an amusement park standing in long lines. This is nothing like that. So,
So Dana,
I hope.
we've gone amazingly enough for over an hour. How would you like your audience to leave you, and what do you want to tell them as we depart?
I guess I want people to feel um, that there's hope, that if we band together and don't fractionalize, and don't go look for the differences, but look for the commonalities, we're stronger together. There's more hope together. The connection is so enlivening and there's a lot of joy. It's sort of a mitzvah or a part of being Jewish that you live every minute you have to the maximum. And if this trip sounds interesting to you, come and have an incredible time with me, living life to the maximum in Italy, cooking, eating, and learning more about Jewish history.
Is your husband Steve going with you?
He has been with me twice before, and he's not 100% sure whether or not he's coming this time, but he's definitely been before, and I'll soon know if he's coming again.
Well, well, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with me and share your love of Italy, your love of Jewish cooking. You are such a great friend, and I so appreciate you making time to share what your next passion and entrepreneurship looks like. So thank you so much, Dana, and we'll see you. And I want to share that this interview will be part of a film that I'll be producing with additional content about this region and what its history looked like, and even maybe some Jewish cooking. So we'll see you on the other side. Take care now.
Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure.